When we speak of the giants of philosophy, Aristotle stands at the very center. Born in 384 BCE, orphaned at an early age, he studied under Plato and later tutored Alexander the Great. From science to politics, from logic to literature, Aristotle shaped almost every field of knowledge, building a system that blended observation with philosophy. His school, the Lyceum, also called the Peripatetic School, became a model of collaborative empirical scholarship. Pause here and note this: Aristotle pioneered deductive reasoning, also known as top-down logic. This method remains central not only in philosophy but also in law, politics, and even modern business. His attention to nature also earned him the title founder of zoology. Now let's explore his key texts. First, Rhetoric asked in exam. Sometimes called the art of rhetoric, it defines rhetoric as the capacity to see in any given case the available means of persuasion. Aristotle identified three modes of appeal: ethos or credibility, pathos or emotion, and logos or logic. With this, he built the foundation of communication studies, showing how reason, style, and delivery shape human judgment. Next, Metaphysics asked in exam. This work introduces what Aristotle called first philosophy, the study of being as being. It explores substance, causation, and the union of form and matter, asking what the ultimate principles of reality are. Its questions about universals, the cosmos, and causality shaped centuries of philosophy, from medieval scholastics to modern thinkers. Then comes Poetics, the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory. Aristotle begins by dividing poetry into epic, tragedy, and comedy, all rooted in mimesis or imitation. But his real focus is tragedy, which he defines as the imitation of a serious, complete action of a certain magnitude. Tragedy, he says, arouses pity and fear, and through this brings catharsis, the purging or clarification of emotion. In contrast to Plato, who distrusted art, Aristotle saw imitation as natural, a way for humans to learn and find emotional balance. Another important group is the Parva Naturalia, literally short works on nature. These 7 treatises examine sensation, memory, dreams, sleep, and aging. Here, Aristotle fused biology with psychology, showing how body and soul interact. And finally, the Organon. This collection of 6 works on logic became the instrument of philosophy. It systematized deductive reasoning through syllogisms, but also considered induction. The Organon shaped medieval philosophy and directly inspired Francis Bacon, whose Novum Organum asked in exam was deliberately written as a corrective to Aristotle's system. So, when you think of Aristotle, remember the scope: rhetoric for persuasion, metaphysics for first philosophy, poetics for tragedy and catharsis, Parva Naturalia for psychology, and the Organon for logic. Each of these texts has been asked in exam, and together they show why Aristotle remains the architect of Western intellectual tradition. When we speak of literary criticism in the West, everything begins with Aristotle's Poetics. Written in 26 chapters, it is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory. But remember, only the sections on tragedy and epic survive. The second part, which dealt with comedy, is lost. Asked in exam. The text first entered the Renaissance world through Giorgio Valla's Latin translation of 1498, later reprinted in 1508, a turning point in European criticism. Asked in exam. Unlike Plato, who dismissed poetry as imitation twice removed from truth, Aristotle valued poetry for its aesthetic and emotional power. Aced in exam. He sought to analyze its excellence rationally. Asked in exam. At the heart of his theory lies mimesis, or imitation, not a copy of appearances, but an artistic act that reveals universal truths. Aristotle valued mimesis over rhetoric. Asked in exam. Pause here and note this. Aristotle divided poetry into 3 main kinds: verse drama, lyric poetry, and epic poetry. Asked in exam, These differ in three ways: by medium, music, rhythm, and melody; by character, the moral quality of figures represented; and by manner, whether the story is narrated or enacted. Asked in exam. Aristotle's analysis of tragedy became the most influential. He placed tragedy above epic, while comedy he assigned to the portrayal of base or lower characters. Tragedy, he explained, uses pleasurable accessories, embellished language, rhythm, and song. Asked in exam. Yet, its real function lies deeper. It arouses pity and fear, leading to catharsis, a purification or clarification of emotions. Aristotle identified 6 parts of tragedy: mythos, plot; ethos, character; dianoia, thought; lexis, diction; melos, melody; and opsis, spectacle. Among these, plot holds primacy. A whole has beginning, middle, end. Asked in exam. In fact, he stated the plot is the end at which tragedy aims. Asked in exam. Characters must be consistent and appropriate. Thought reflects reasoning. Diction gives expressive power. Melody shapes feeling, and spectacle brings visual impact. A central idea here is hamartia, the tragic flaw or error of judgment that brings down the tragic hero. Asked in exam. The hero is neither wholly good nor wholly evil, but someone whose fall provokes pity and fear. Importantly, events must unfold according to what is probable or necessary. Asked in exam. Never arbitrary, always grounded in human logic. Aristotle's Poetics continues to shape how we think about literature. It introduced the vocabulary of tragedy, catharsis, unity, and hamartia concepts that remain alive in classrooms and exams today. And while debates linger especially about catharsis, hamartia, and contradictions in chapters 13 and 14, asked in exam, his rational defense of poetry still stands as the foundation of literary criticism. When we open Aristotle's Poetics, we are stepping into the very foundation of Western literary criticism. Written in the 4th century BCE, it is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory and the first philosophical treatise on poetry. Where Plato distrusted poetry as deception, Aristotle boldly defended it, arguing that poetry reveals universal truths through its aesthetic and emotional power. Asked in exam. Pause here because this is crucial for exams. Aristotle insisted that poetry could be studied rationally. He believed in systematic analysis of poetic excellence. Asked in exam. He even gave us the word itself, poetike, meaning the poetic art. From there, he classified poetry into 3 main forms: drama, lyric, and epic. Asked in exam. All 3 share the principle of mimesis or imitation, but they differ in rhythm, harmony, meter, melody, character, and narration. Remember, Aristotle said music itself varies in rhythm, harmony, meter, and melody. Asked in exam. Now, let's compare epic and tragedy. Both imitate serious subjects. But epic is narrative. It has no time limit and uses a single verse type. Tragedy, on the other hand, is dramatic, compressed in time and staged before an audience. For Aristotle, tragedy contained all the elements of epic, but not the other way around. That made tragedy, in his view, the more refined form. He even noted that someone who can judge tragedy is also fit to judge epic, though not vice versa. Another vital point, emotion. Aristotle believed poets are most persuasive when they themselves feel the emotions they portray. Anger, grief, distress, these ring true when the poet authentically embodies them. Poetry, then, is inseparable from the emotional life of both poet and audience. The Poetics gives special weight to tragedy. Here we meet 2 famous terms, catharsis and hamartia. Catharsis is the purgation or purification of pity and fear. Hamartia is the error or flaw that leads to the hero's downfall. But note carefully between chapters 13 and 14, Aristotle seems to contradict himself about the nature of these concepts asked in exam. That tension has fueled centuries of commentary. At its core, Aristotle saw poetry as the union of rhetoric and mimesis, the persuasive power of language combined with the imitation of human life. This combination gave poetry its universality, allowing it to transcend ornament or mere storytelling to capture the essence of human action. So, when you think of poetics, anchor these points. Aristotle's defense of poetry against Plato. Asked in exam, his rational classification of epic, lyric and drama asked in exam. His view that tragedy is higher than epic. His focus on catharsis and hamartia, including the contradictions asked in exam. And finally, his vision of poetry as rhetoric plus imitation. These ideas keep poetics at the very heart of literary theory. When we talk about the foundations of literary theory, everything goes back to Aristotle's Poetics. This short but powerful text gave us the vocabulary we still use to study tragedy today, and many of these terms have been asked in exam. At the heart of Aristotle's theory is mimesis, meaning imitation asked in exam. For Aristotle, poetry and drama are imitations of human life, representing action, character, and emotion on stage. From this principle flows the entire structure of tragedy. The tragic hero is often marked by hubris or destructive pride, and this pride usually invites nemesis, the retribution that follows human excess. The downfall itself comes through hamartia, which Aristotle described as a tragic flaw or a miscalculation in judgment asked in exam. As the story unfolds, the hero experiences anagnosis, a recognition or moment of self-discovery often tied to peripecia, a reversal of fortune where events turn from good to bad. Finally, tragedy resolves in catharsis, the purgation or purification of pity and fear in the audience, warning that is what makes tragedy not just a story but a profound emotional experience. Pause here and note this. Aristotle also listed the essential features of a true tragedy. First, it must be mimetic, imitating life and action. Second, it should be serious and somber in tone. Third, it must tell a complete story of proper length with beginning, middle, and end. Fourth, it should include rhythm and harmony, weaving verse, song, and performance. Fifth, it must be performed rather than narrated. Its immediacy is part of its power. And finally, it must arouse pity and fear, which are released through catharsis. By setting down these principles, Aristotle gave tragedy its unique place as the highest genre of poetry, one that combines philosophy, psychology, and aesthetics. His terms mimesis, hamartia, catharsis are more than definitions. They are the very grammar of tragedy, shaping how we read drama from Sophocles to Shakespeare.